Hi everybody, welcome to the session. We'll basically be talking about how the three of us we went about our preparation for the interviews last year, and we'll quickly start off with short introductions of ourselves. So I'll go first. I'm Anushka, and I'm a fresher, and I'm currently studying at IIM Calcutta. I completed my BCom honors from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, in 2021. And for my summers, I'll be interning with Credit Suisse in the investment banking division. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Divya. I did my schooling from St. Mary's Convent School, Udaipur, and I graduated from St. Stephen's College, Delhi University, in physics honors. Post which I have a work stint of close to 2 years in the field of data science and analytics, and I'm currently pursuing my MBA from FMS Delhi, and I will be joining Amazon for my summer internship this year.
Hi, everybody. My name is Preksha Malhotra. I graduated from Indraprastha College for Women with a Bachelor of Commerce honors. Post that, I worked with Deloitte USI for about 9 months in the role of audit assistant. I am currently studying in IIM Calcutta, and I'd be joining Deutsche Bank as a fixed income currencies analyst for the summers.
Moving on from there. So we'll keep the session in a way where we'll firstly discuss how each of us individually went about our prep, because since we three have slightly different backgrounds, so I'm a fresher and they both have work experience. So we'll talk a little bit about how we went about with our preparation. So on my end, firstly, so for me, my preparation was essentially divided into three portions. So the first part was basically about the personal questions. So the reason that it was one of the first things I catered to is because it requires a lot of introspection, and it requires a lot of time to actually come up with good answers. And also another reason was that you have to get those answers reviewed by a lot of people, because you might not really be able to include everything you're supposed to in the first go. So that is one aspect of the preparation. And also, these questions become very important since they actually differentiate you from the other candidates, right? Because you are sitting with a homogeneous pool of candidates who scored an equally good percentile and probably have very similar academic backgrounds as well. So, given the fact that this is the time where you get to tell the panel about your story, your motivation about going for an MBA, and why you would be a better fit as a candidate compared to the other students. The second part for me was definitely academics. So as a fresher, that is basically the foundation of what formed most of my interviews. And for my academics, I essentially tried and brushed up all the subjects that I had in my undergrad. So the basics of accounts, economics, financial management. So I think these things really were very important, because I think across all my interviews, that is where we always started from. So they, essentially ask me, what is your favorite subject, or, which is the field that you're interested in. And that would kind of lead the rest of the interview. So moving ahead from there, the how I prepared for the academic portion was that I used my own notes, obviously, from college. And another very important source was the compendiums that were circulated from the B schools itself. So they actually give you a very good set of questions regarding every subject and field. And it's a very good way you can actually use it as a framework, right? So you know that, okay, so these are the kind of questions I can be asked for economics, similarly for accounts, etc. So as far as material is concerned, I think the internet is a very, very good source. So you can pick up good websites, etc., and actually brush up the things that you might have not retained well. And lastly, this was a very vague portion again, because it's not like they will for sure ask you about it, but again, it is still important because you don't know where they might. So the third part was the current affairs and general news, etc. So I am a quizzer, so that made life a little bit easier for me. But apart from that as well, I basically picked up two newspapers. One was a general newspaper, so I took up the Hindu, and for business, I took up the Mint. So these two were newspapers that I read on a regular basis for approximately a month before and throughout my interviews. And when I say you have to read the newspaper, I don't essentially mean that you have to read every single page and every single article that's there in it. But the objective should basically to be that so that you're up to date with whatever's happening. So, for example, the budget will be coming out, and that forms a very good topic of discussion. So, you should really be thorough with what the budget had and what were the distinctive characteristics this year. And it's not just about knowing these topics, it's also about having your opinion about these topics. So, try and understand what the implications of, let's say, particular policies are, so that if and when the interview asks you, let's say, what is your opinion about this, you have something to say. So that is one very important part. And as apart from that, general knowledge in the sense that you should be aware of about things happening in your state, in your locality. For example, I'm from Calcutta, and one of my interviews had a portion wherein we discussed a little bit about the political scenario in West Bengal. So these are kind of the kind of things that they expect you to know, and even though you're not supposed to know every single thing, but at least the more obvious things should be something that you're aware of. So yeah, these were essentially the three primary aspects of my interview preparation. So I'll leave it to Divya now.
Sure. Thank you, Anushka. So adding on, I would just start like for a general prep, we should work on a proper intro and try to include everything, all highlights that you have, even from your school or UG or your hobbies, and practice it almost daily. Like I used to practice it with my parents and my friends, and I used to improve it on a daily basis so that I can have like this perfect intro. So whenever there's a start and you don't know, there's an awkward thing, you have something to say about yourself. Secondly, which IIM are you preparing for? So go through their website, check their coursework, check what all are the different subjects that are taught, check what is unique to that IIM that you are going to interview for, and also the region knowledge. So I mean, if I remember when I was interviewing for IIM Lucknow, I researched about Lucknow as a region as well, as in what are the places to visit or what are the cuisines that are famous there. And even in my indoor interview, I was asked very region specific questions. So it's important that you read up about the IIM that you're interviewing for and also the region in which the IIM is from. Thirdly, I would also say actively read the interview questions that come up in these Telegram groups that are created for all the call getters. It's really important that you do know what kind of questions are asked, and it was actually helpful for me in my IIM Calcutta interview because that is when I realized that they're asking basic maths from 9 to 12th, and I started revising everything starting from integration, simple calculus, and everything. So it did help me, those Telegram groups and what kind of questions were being asked, and not just like one group, like say one GK question asked in some IIM could be helpful for some other IIM as well. So that is one thing. Apart from this, as Anushka said, we need to work on our GK, like read everything and anything about India, its states, the ministers. Do read newspapers regularly. I used to read Economic Times and the Hindu. And thirdly, I would also say simultaneously work on your hobbies as well. So there are all these are always good talking points about you which can come out as different in your interview. So say if you say your hobby is say badminton or just staying fit, or you have had a like a something sports related in your CV, then do know about it, like do know about the latest news around your hobbies. So say for example, if reading is your hobby, do know that who got the Nobel Prize in literature, or say the women's cricket team captain, or etc. These were few things that were asked in my interview, and hence I was saying. And also be thorough with your own background, something as simple as your religion, because in an interview I was asked about like who is Saint Stephen's based on the college I'm from and based on my religion. So something as simple as related to your religion can also be a question, and I mean they expect you to know all of this. So yeah, over to Preksha.
Yeah. Actually, talking about what Divya just mentioned, questions about religion are particularly important. I remember about 80% of my interview was based on my mythological scriptures and everything. So you should be aware about all those things that are related to you. Particularly because I had a work ex, so I went about with my prep in a different way than Anushka, because I did not have quite a lot of time to read newspapers. So what I basically did was, for those of you who do not have time to read newspaper, it's the best thing to do. But in case you do not have time, but you need to prep, then you can actually subscribe to some channel that basically takes you across the entire thing that has been happening in the country. It gives you a detail about the facts, and it also sort of gives you an opinion. But my advice would be to just take the facts from there and then build on your own opinion, because you do not want to present an opinion that is not yours. Because when it comes to you justifying somebody else's opinion, you'll not be able to do it. The second thing is that your basics should be strong. So you should have a very clear thought about why do you want to pursue an MBA, what is exactly your long term and short term goal, and that is basically just to ensure that you are able to answer questions along these lines, because there will be quite a lot of interviews where you will be grilled about why exactly do you want to go for an MBA and how is an MBA relevant to you. For example, in one of my interviews, I was actually grilled on the fact that I could have gone for a CA or a CFA if I wanted to work in a financial industry. But then, how is MBA relevant? Then I had to defend everything. And I also there was another thing that I learned from my interviews, and it was that you don't speak negative about anything that is related to you. So you have to defend everything and anything that is there on your CV. So I remember in my IIM Calcutta interview, I was actually said that audit was boring. And I had to defend that audit wasn't boring. And then the follow up question was that if it's not boring and if it's so enriching, then why don't you continue audit? So you have to think through questions and you have to come up with answers that you've already thought through. So when you build, like Divya mentioned, that when you build your um, tell me about yourself answer, then you have to think about things that you're mentioning in your tell me about yourself, and what are the questions that you can expect when you speak about those things, because there could be something that is very catchy to the panelists and they can start asking you questions about the same. So until and unless you've not thought through about the questions that can come to you, you will not be able to come up with very good answers or very relevant answers across those questions. So that was one thing. Another thing was for people with work experience. I think Divya can also tell and correct me if I'm wrong, but you do not have to focus on all the subjects. So, for example, my work ex was related to more about accounts and finance. So, in that case, I went about studying only those two subjects per se in depth, because those were the two subjects. So, those were the subjects that were relevant to me and my work ex. So there were so many subjects that were taught to us in our graduation. So I did not go about reading all of those. And in fact, in a couple of interviews, I was asked questions about, from subjects that were not per se related to my background, or background in the sense my work experience background. So I politely said that I don't remember, because it's been a quite long time that I have studied those, and it was okay. So you do not have to stress about the fact that you have to study all the 30 subjects. Probably study something that's relevant to you, and also something that you're keen on. So if you go there and say that you're keen on finance, but then you do not know finance as a subject and you've already studied it, or you do not know the basics of finance, then it looks bad. So you need to know those questions.
Yeah, so I think we have a question from the chat. So is it okay to say that you don't know the answers to the math questions? So I think I'll take this up because this was something I did not, thankfully, I did not encounter in any of the interviews, but I did in my mock interviews. So I am somebody who's not very comfortable with math. It's not a subject that I've really liked, and I was really dreading math questions, especially for my IIM Calcutta interview, since we were always told that it's one B school that tends to ask you statistics related and math related questions. So even if I was a non-engineer, that did not leave me out from that ambit. So so what I did was that my agenda was, if I was to be asked a particular question, I'll try and apply. Like I don't think it's a very good idea to say that you don't know straight ahead, but a better option would be to give it a shot. You might be wrong. That's completely all right, but try to attempt it in the most logical and rational way that you think you can solve it. Because even during one of my mock PIs, I was asked a question related to regression, and at that point I wasn't very comfortable with the topic. However, I still used the basics that I knew and I tried to answer it. So what usually happens is that when you're solving it and let's say you're not able to reach the correct solution, so they try to actually come in and let's say they'll give you hints and they'll try to help you out of it. So the answer to this question would be, don't say upfront that you don't know the answer. Just try your best and don't be bothered about whether you get the answer right or wrong. So it's more about giving it a shot in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So just adding on to what Anushka said, I think just walking them through your thinking process of say a question that you don't know, or what are you thinking, or what basic concepts you think can you apply, could also work out. I mean, there are questions, they do try to ask us hard questions as well, just to test like how do we react to such difficult situations. So maybe not saying straight up no, but just letting them know the basic concepts that we know and walking them through the thinking process would be definitely helpful.
And I think it is a very common dilemma amongst the people that is it a good idea to actually say that you don't know something when you don't know it. So, when it comes to something which requires you to apply logic, it is not a good idea to say a no, as the both of my friends here have said. Basically, they're trying to see your logic and how you think, and they're not really interested in the correct answer. So, if you're walking the right path, they will be okay and they will understand that not everybody can reach into the correct destination in that particular point of time. But if your way of thinking is okay, or if you're thinking in the right direction, that suffices. And then there are questions like, for example, what if they ask you a news and you don't really know anything about that news? Then is it a good idea to say a no? Yes, it is. Because you cannot know everything under the sun. So, in case you do not know something, then you politely say that you don't know. And you say that, I'll probably go back and read about this topic after the interview. I don't know about this as such. And it actually happened in my IIM Calcutta interview. They asked me three news, and of which two I did not know. So I politely said that I don't really have an idea about what is going around this particular topic. So I'm not sure. I'll go and read about this and get back in the next interview, or probably, build my knowledge around it.
Yeah, and also to add on to that, this is something that happened in my own IMC interview as well. So, one of the things that you submit to the B school before your interview is the form. So, these forms are basically specific to each B school, and you're supposed to mention not just the academic qualifications and your marks, but you also there's a portion where you have to mention your extracurriculars and any kind of academic achievements, etc. So, I think this is a question that I got a lot from my friends as well who are preparing this year, and I think it applies to a very large pool of test takers. So many people think that they don't have enough points to put in that portion of the form. They feel that maybe the academic achievements will have to be left empty, or similarly for the extracurriculars, because they don't have substantial achievements in that area. So what I would suggest is that try to use that area of the form to bring out anything that's unique about yourself. So it's not really about what you've achieved. It's more about what are the other things that you do apart from your academic interest. So and also it forms a very very good basis of discussion. So for example, in my I am Calcutta interview, I had mentioned that I have written an article for a journal, and in like almost 25% of my I am Calcutta interview was revolving around that. So in that case as well, and apart from that, I had also mentioned about my hobbies. So as Divya had mentioned, right? I mean, if you have a hobby, then you should know things about it. So I had mentioned that I have a blog. So they did ask about it. So you should be prepared about all the items that you mentioned there, and use that area to really bring out unique aspects of yourself. So it could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, I have won a national case competition or something of that sort. It can be anything small, but as long as it's unique and you can talk about it, it works. Because I have read about a lot of people who've discussed anything ranging from Harry Potter to their love for football during interviews. So it's a very common thing. So, and it really helps you because it gives you the opportunity to lead the interview. And since it's an area you're comfortable with, the chances of you not being able to answer those questions and being in a difficult situation, that gets minimized drastically. So yeah, that's a very important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. So adding on to what Anushka said, I think, yeah, exactly. Knowing your CV or the application form really well is very important. Everything, every single thing that you write in your application is being read by the professors. And hence you should know, say if you say reading is a hobby, then I think you should say prepare a book or a summary of a book if they ask you like, what are you reading? What are you currently reading? So answers should be prepared for that so that they do know that whatever you're saying is genuine about you. Also, there might be instances where you do not know answers, just like Preksha mentioned. So, for example, things like history. So, I was asked, given from my region, I was asked about the Battle of Haldigati, and I did not know the answer at that moment. So, I just politely said how that I would go back and read about it, and I said I do not know. So, things like these, and they do move on to other questions, and I don't think they count this as something negative, but we need to make sure that whatever we have, say for example our basic concepts of say so since I have a science background, and also like I work ex in data science. So basic conceptual questions around those were asked, and I mean they expected me to know them, and it was really important that I brushed through all of these. So yeah, knowing your background and whatever you've studied till now was really important.
And especially for people with work experience, you need to have a question prepared where you are explaining how a typical day in your life looks like, and don't mention the routine tasks, but take them through something that is interesting about your work. I mean, what you do basically might be mundane on some days, but it might be exciting. So when they ask you, take us through your day, you basically have to talk about things that you do, or probably an area that you worked on, and what exactly did you do, how did you manage it, and what exactly happens in that. For example, because I was working in audit, so I took them across a particular testing area, what exactly happens from the beginning to the end. So just being very thorough with what you're doing in your work, or even in your college, etc., is essentially very important. And as Divya mentioned, they want to check how genuine what you're writing is. So it is advisable that you do not try to fake anything that you're writing in the application forms or your CV, because those people read things. So if there's something that you've just made up and written, or if you've spoken something that you've just made up, so you'll not be able to defend it, and that will go against you. Not having something to speak about a particular topic is still fine, but saying something and then not being able to defend it will go against you. So it's generally advisable that you try to portray anything and everything that is genuine, and don't try to make up things on your CV just to look like you're too amazing a person.
Yeah, so I think that brings us to the next question, which is about, what were some of the brownie points that we had in our CV. So I'll just take this up from my end, because I think as a fresher, I got this question a lot, because it's a very common myth or idea that as a fresher I won't have enough things to talk about, or it's difficult to have a good profile as a fresher, because you're still in college and there's only so much you can do. But I think it really depends on how you utilize your time in college, because I think in my case, because we had that lockdown, I really took that time to kind of do things that I could talk about. So I mean, I was already part of a club in college as well. So that was something I think, and I think that is something that most people already have in their profile. So that would not really make me stand out. But for example, I wrote that article which got published. So that was one of the good things. Then, as I mentioned, I'm a quizzer. So that is something I, actively pursued during my college time. So that again became, a substantial point in that CV. And also participated in a couple of case competitions. So even that became something. So these are things that I think you can do, you know, right from your last year in college, like even if it's along with your CAT preparation, because to be honest, like these are things that really do give you a lot of learning as well, apart from just being something you can write in your CV. So for example, the only reason that I could, the fact that I had that article in my form, that I could talk about it and I could actually take them through my perspective on that topic. And in fact, there was also a question in my calculator interview regarding the same, wherein they asked me the date of a particular industrial revolution. So I did not know it, despite the fact that I had mentioned it in my article. But again, I mean, I took the correct way out, which was not by stammering. I just told them that, I'll definitely look it up. I told them the portion that I knew. But yeah, so brownie points are basically, I mean, it can be anything that, you like. So if you like, writing, you can, maybe come up with a blog. That's something I did as well. If you like, let's say a particular sport, then, you'll probably have like achievements related to sports, whether even if it's like not a very huge thing, that can be your talking point. So try to look for things, that have a substantial learning. Now, when I say this, don't, I mean, there are a lot of people who think that, anything and everything can be a hobby. So the answer to this is partially yes, but also no. Because there are a lot of things that we just do for leisure, right? So the problem is that those activities, they might not really contribute much to learning. And even if they do, it's going to be very difficult for you to justify it. So try to, talk about hobbies that have some meaning and, contribute something to your, skills. Because like, let's say for example, sports. So, sportsmanship and the spirit of a sports person is something that helps you outside the field as well, as an individual. So it teaches you how to handle failure and things like that, and teamwork, etc. So these are things that you can talk about. So look for those kind of activities and hobbies. And yeah, extracurriculars, of course, you can look out for internships. That's actually a great way, because not only does it give you experience, it really adds a boost to your CV. So keep an eye out for those, and you can look for, like, let's say, life projects, any kind of volunteering opportunities. So all these are all things that you can look for in as brownie points. So yeah.
Yeah. So adding on to what Anushka said, from a work perspective, maybe talking about projects that have had like a high impact in your work time, or say some awards that you got during your work tenure, or about say in regarding extracurricular or any activity, or just like Anushka mentioned, some live projects or social service volunteering opportunities that you've been doing. All these can work as interesting talking points for you during the interview as well, and these highlight you as well as make you stand out from others. So adding these would be helpful.
Yeah, adding to what Divya said, basically about awards, you can actually mention those. And for me, it was one of the brownie points, because when I was appearing for my interview, I just had a work ex of about 6 to 7 months, but I had received a couple of awards, so I talked about those. And then I was a national swimmer, so I talked about that. So anything that is specific to you, or some achievement of yours that is basically making you stand out in the crowd, can act as a brownie point. And even if you don't really have it, I don't think it has a major impact on your selection criteria, because you should be able to talk about whatever you have on your CV. It could be ordinary, it could be extraordinary, but you have to be able to talk about it. If you have something extraordinary on your CV, but you're not able to defend it, or you're not able to talk about it, then it actually is serving no purpose.
Yeah, and also another aspect, I think, which a lot of people have, I mean, they have questions about, is especially for freshers. So I'm basically highlighting freshers because I think as an aspirant last year, I had a lot of questions and doubts regarding my profile. And at that point, I think it was very difficult to get it addressed, because you don't find a lot of freshers who've like made it to good B schools, because it is difficult at the end of the day. Having it's not impossible, but again, yeah, having work experience does give you somewhat of an edge, not just in terms of the fact that you have a little bit more experience about things, but also because there are points assigned to work experience. And even though it varies from B school to B school, it has some amount of weightage. But I think as a fresher, again, there are certain advantages as well. I mean, because if you think of it this way, you've just passed out of college, or you're still in college at that point. So you're you have a ability to learn and study at that point of time. You've not lost contact with it, so it's very easy for you to actually adapt to the MBA curriculum very fast. And and this is regardless of your academic background. It basically refers to the fact that you are already in an academic environment, so shifting from one to the other would not be as tough as it would be for somebody who's been, let's say, working for a year or two. So it's very difficult. I mean, this is the feedback that I've got, that it's slightly difficult for them to actually, come back to the classroom and get back into that practice of studying and taking exams on a regular basis, so things like that. So yeah, definitely freshers are like not at an explicit disadvantage. It's about how you look at it, because at the end of the day, I mean, every profile is going to have some advantages and some disadvantages. It's about how you look at it and how you capitalize on those opportunities. So yeah.
Adding to what Anushka said, I am going to put in a perspective from a person with a work ex point of view, and I think Divya can also add on to it. I have been asked a lot of questions about how did I go about preparing for the interviews when I was actually working, and I was like working for 8 to 9 hours a day, and then it was exhausting experience. So my advice in general would be to plan out your day well in advance and to think about what exactly do you want to study and what do you not want to study. So in that point of time you have to basically apply logic and mind in order to sort of give weightage to what is important and neglect what is per se not very important or relevant to you in that very moment. So you have to plan your say a couple of months ahead of you accordingly in a way that you're able to cover all the things that are important to you. For example, when I started studying, I started with preparing basic accountancy and basic finance because it was what was related to my profile. Then I went about studying about what exactly is my work experience, how exactly is my work as an assistant contributing to the larger goal of the organization, what is happening around the industry that I am working in. So I was working for the US client. So I studied about both the US industry and how Indian industry in this particular segment operates. And then because I was working in a particular domain also, so I was working for the transportation industry. I read about the transportation industry because it was what I was working in. I read about what exactly is the trend, how has COVID affected them, what exactly are the changes that those people are trying to bring in to, not let their business be affected by COVID as much, or how are they trying to cope up, what are the steps they're taking, and per se for the markets in general. For example, because I said that I wanted to go in finance, then I had to study about what is happening in the finance world and everything. So you need to be aware about what exactly is happening. But as Anushka mentioned in the beginning, that she studied all the subjects, as a person with work experience, that is a relative advantage because you do not have to focus on everything, as I also mentioned in the beginning. So you can basically pick up things that are relevant to you. So you have to do that filtering for yourself and study only what's relevant. So I think Anushka or Divya, I don't remember, somebody mentioned that when you're reading a newspaper, you do not have to read everything and anything. So that exactly is how you go about the preparation also. You do not have to study everything and anything that is available to you or is being given to you. You have to filter about what is probably relevant to you, because what will I as the commerce student do by studying quantum physics or something like that. So I had to filter things. There were too many things available to me, but of those resources, what is per se relevant to me, I had to filter it and study it. And then again, make sure that if you're filtering out the subjects and you're just deciding to prepare 2 or 3 subjects, be strong on those, because when you go out on interviews and you talk about the couple of subjects that you've prepared, you should be thorough with it, because you've already not prepared a major chunk of what you've already studied. So if you're just preparing 2 subjects, make sure that you do it in and out so that any question asked from that particular domain, you can answer it. And I think while I was prepping, I had this doubt that if I just prepare for like 2 subjects and there's an XYZ subject that is asked to me, how do I basically say that no, I have not studied this? So I was told that you politely say that no, I've not studied it, but I've studied these 2 subjects because this is what relates to my work experience. So I am in touch with these subjects. You can test my knowledge on these. I mean, you just frame it in a better way, but that's how you go about telling those people. And then another thing is, quite a lot of people always tell that you need to drive your interview. When I was on the other end, I did not really figure out how can a person drive an interview. But then on the journey, I figured out that by driving your interview, you basically mean that you sort of put your emphasis on things that you want them to question you about. So there can be n number of things that you've done or that are there on your CV, but there could just be, say, 3 or 4 things that you're very comfortable about. So you should probably highlight those things more, so that the panelists also figure out that this is something that you probably want to talk about. So probably include that in your introduction or something, so you'll be able to speak about it, because your introduction per se is an open stage from where the panelists take forward the interview. So if you're putting in things that you don't want them to question you on in the intro only, then it's probably not good for you. So include things that you want the panelists to talk to you about in your tell me about yourself or introduction, so that those are the leads for the panelists to take forward the interview, and that's exactly how you lead your interview.
Yeah, just adding on to what Preksha said. Since I was from the science background, for all my interviews, I did make sure, and then my undergraduation was in physics. I did make sure to skim through all my undergrad subjects, at least all the basics, and also class 9 to 12 science as well as maths for at least my IIM Calcutta Lucknow interviews. And there were questions asked, very basic questions around the subject, but get asked. And I mean, if I would have not revised, probably it would have been difficult for me to answer them on the go. And then what they're trying to check here is like, whatever you have learned till now, do you actually use it, or do you actually remember? Like, do you really remember what you're studying? So maybe skimming through all the subjects and knowing about your basics is very important. And since my work is was from data science and statistics, I did research and read up a lot about that as well. And from my work experience, like the projects that I've done as well, I did research on the industry and the client and everything, the working that we used to, the way it was working. So yeah, researching and knowing everything about your own background, say like your work ex or your undergrad, is very important, because they do expect you to, since you're spending so many years of your life there, they do expect you that you have learned something from it. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think another question, Preksha, do you want to highlight something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So another question that I actually wanted all of us to discuss was our why MBA answers. So the reason is because I think it really differs from person to person. But again, when you, as an individual, when I sat down to come up with an answer for it, I felt that it was very, very generic, and it almost sounded like every other fresher or every other person with a similar profile. They'd basically be saying the same thing. And I think this answer is something which really has the power to, kind of change a lot of things for you, both in your favor and against your favor. So the thing is that for example, in my case, since I was a fresher, it did not make sense for me to say things which were very career oriented, in the sense that, I cannot have the same clarity about my career that somebody with work ex has, because they've had a taste of the corporate world and they know that, okay, so this is something I've done. Now I don't want to do it. Hence, I want to go into this field. Or, let's say, okay, I have done this, but now I want to advance in this field even, at a faster pace. So hence, I want to do an MBA. But I could not say all of those things. So my answer and this is something that goes for all freshers. So there are two things that you can do. Firstly, you do talk about your career, but you talk about it in a way that, it's something that you aspire to do. So, for example, I was interested in finance, and I clearly mentioned in almost all my interviews that, okay, if I was asked what's my favorite subject, I would usually say banking and finance. So again, my YMB answer had a relation to that, right? So I did mention that I am highly inclined towards this. I've studied about it. I've, written a dissertation about it, and now that's why I feel that, I want to enter this industry. But again, to enter this industry, I need to have a much more stronger foundation in the subject itself, and I think an MBA would give me that kind of, not only just the theoretical knowledge, but also the practical aspect of it, like through my internship and through other, life projects, etc. So these things would actually strengthen my knowledge, and it would help me, it would basically open the doors to that industry. And that is what was one part of the answer. The other thing was, which it's something which was more qualitative in nature. Right. So since this is a very objective answer, and it essentially still focuses on some aspect of your career, the qualitative thing that I spoke about is that, as a fresher, since I've not worked in the corporate world, I wanted to experience what the, hustle and the rigor of the corporate world would be like in a simulated environment. And that's what a B school would essentially do for me. So even though I'm not actually working, I will be experiencing, like through the internship. The internship is basically like a 2 month test period almost. So it would help me learn, and I still had the freedom to kind of make mistakes and learn from them. And that's not something you get once you're in a permanent job, because those mistakes are going to cost you a lot, and it's much more dearer. But I think throughout your internship period, or in general in your B school, when you're working on, let's say, case competitions, there's a very steep learning curve over there. So for me, that was one of my objectives, that as a fresher, I want to apply my skills and knowledge in the simulated environment first, make whatever mistakes I will, and then learn from those, so that before I actually step into the corporate world, I am ready to handle whatever comes my way. And I think that is proving to be very true, because I mean, we almost three of us are done with our first year, almost very close to ending it. And I think we can confidently say that, compared to the people we were 6 to 8 months back, I think we're very different now in terms of the way we think and in terms of the way we approach problems and, come up with solutions. So this is something that a B school does to you. So it's not just about, it's not just about, switching careers or, just entering a new field. It's also about, getting this holistic development, which, you get in this kind of an environment. So yeah.
Yeah, just adding on to what Anushka said, I think in our YMBA, having something which is very personal to you can also add up, just like she mentioned, not just mentioning the generic career growth or progression answer. So for me, it was like I realized how in my workplace, having an MBA would give me an edge in creating an impact. The level of impact that was possible with an MBA was very different from what level I was working at currently. And hence, and also the learning towards, okay, I want to learn finance, I want to know how marketing works, I want to know how different business domains work, was one factor. And secondly, in your YMBA answer, also including why particular B school, why MBA from this particular B school also works, like why MBA from IIM Calcutta. So people who are finance enthusiasts might want to pursue IIM Calcutta, people who are looking for more ops, or I mean, depending on your own personal preferences. So including why this particular B school for your MBA is also important.
Yeah, and adding to that, I have been in touch with a few people who've been preparing for, the interviews and everything. And I've come across a couple of answers wherein, they've talked about a particular, say, career goal that they have and the particular career path that they want to walk down. But then it is very important for a person to basically check if that career path that you want to take is actually possible after you enter a particular B school or not. For example, if you're talking about, say, for example, you want to be an environmental consultant, and then you're sitting in a B school where you don't have that profile coming in, then how do you justify that that B school is going to help you achieve your goal? So you have to think through in a way that you are presenting your career goal, but also how that particular B school is going to help you bridge it. Because if that particular B school and what you aspire to do cannot help you bridge that gap, then the question is that why do you want to even come here when that B school cannot offer you exactly what do you want to pursue in your career? So it's like they just said, very essential for you to think through how a particular B school is going to add value to you, so that whatever you aspire to do in the short run or long run is actually something that you can do or something that you can realize. So it's not like you have a vague goal and then you're just eager to enter any B school, but you have to think through about how an MBA per se is going to help you. So, as I mentioned that in almost all the interviews, I had to defend that why did I want to go for an MBA and not a CA or a CFA if I want to work in a finance industry. And because I had the relevant work experience, I could pursue the same and switch to another job in a financial world. So you have to think through about how exactly is an MBA going to help you. You have to talk about the kind of experience that you might get in. As Anushka mentioned, that it's a life changing experience. The kind of thinking that it makes you go through, or the kind of grind that it makes you go through, it changes you as a person. You think in a very different way, you act in a very different way. Probably some things that might freak you out right now won't freak you out when you're 8 months or 9 months down in a B school. So those are the things that basically help you or you acquire in your journey on a B school. So that's how you basically frame an answer about how exactly is an MBA and an MBA from a particular B school going to help you realize your goal. Okay, getting a knowledge about something is obvious and you can get it through, say, CFA or CA, but going through the grind, developing your personality as a person and as a professional is something that MBA helps you with. So probably framing an answer around why is an MBA important for you and why is it important for you at this point in your career is something that you should be aware about.
Yeah, so just adding on to what Preksha mentioned, right? Why that particular B school? And I mean, even if it's not why that particular B school, it could also, this the what I'll talk about can cater to, why an MBA right now, and why not a little bit of work ex, and then you can come for an MBA. Because I think this is something that I was asked in almost one or two of my interviews. So, for example, in my case, I was always inclined towards banking and finance, and I knew for a fact, matter of fact, that without any professional courses, it would be very difficult for me to get a role of my choice without an MBA. And that's when I even if we talk about investment banking for that matter, it's near impossible to get into an investment bank without a MBA degree, because these they don't even bother, they barely recruit outside these schools. So it's a industry which is so exclusive that you can only enter it through a B school. So for me, in that case, this became a talking point that the industry that I want to get into it has a lot of barriers to entry. So one of the ways that I can enter it is through an MBA, and I know that without that, I won't be able to achieve this. So and as to the question of why now and why not, after getting some work ex, I actually did answer that because I had a placement offer at that point from campus. But my answer was that the role that I was getting at that point is not something that I, felt would enrich my knowledge, or was a field that I could, apply what I had learned. It was not so related to what I'm interested in. So you don't necessarily have to say that, okay, I'm not going to get a good job right now, so hence I want to do an MBA, because that's a very blunt answer. But the point is that, maybe the role that you were getting at that stage, it's not something that you would like to pursue. It's not something that excites you. So in that case, I knew that, getting an MBA would open the doors that I needed to get into, that particular role. So yeah, that can be one aspect of the answer as well.
And then another thing that comes to my mind is because I went through too many interviews, and one particular interview, which was SPJAN interview, it was particularly very, very different because they have a group interview. The basic logic which I think or which I could gather through that experience was that they basically want to not just test your knowledge, but they also want to see if you're actually willing to listen to what the other person is saying. Because in my SPJAN interview, there were people from different specializations who had applied for different specializations sitting for a particular interview in a group. And every person had to listen to what the other person was saying. So it was not a compulsion, but if you did not listen to what the other person said, it would reflect poorly on you, because towards the end, they asked each of us to, sort of give one learning point from the other person. Like, what did you learn from whatever the other four people in your panel said? So if you're not paying attention to what the other person has to say or what the other person is speaking, then it reflects badly on you, because in an MBA or in any of your career path, you're not just required to be a good presenter, but you're also required to be a person who can listen to what the other person has to say and then, frame your answers or develop your thinking accordingly and try to probably convince people in case you're in that particular kind of job role. So how much you listen to other people and how much are you paying attention to what the other people have to say when you are not the one who's speaking is also very important. And then I think basic checks in all the interviews is important. For example, in one of my interviews, I had to wait for about 1.5 hours for my interview. So my scheduled time was, I think, 10, but then my interview started at around 11:30, 12, or something like that. And then when I entered the interview, the panelists were like, sorry, we made you wait. And I said that it's okay. You guys are also taking interviews from the morning, so you guys are probably more tired than I am from waiting. So that basically helped lighten the mood, and that also showed them that I had say the presence of mind to say that, okay, yes, you were also somebody who has been taking interviews, so you were also tired. It's not just me who's been waiting since the morning. So just being witty and just having the presence of mind to say the right things at the right time, and probably not portray that you're over smart, is going to help you in all the interviews. There will be interviews when you do not know things. There will be interviews where they're intentionally going to say things like, for example, you have flawless academic performance throughout your life, but there could be, say, a dip in your CGPA in one of the semesters, and somebody points that out and says that you have bad academic performance in this particular year. That basically happens because those people want to see how are you going to react if there is a statement that comes out of the blue to you, or probably if you've done something very flawlessly and there's something that's wrong about it, and then somebody points it and keeps on grilling you around that. So they just want to see how patient you are when you're answering questions of those sorts. There could be blunt statements coming across you, and you might be taken aback, like, what, how can you say that to me? But then you have to, at that point of time, maintain your calm and just very patiently answer whatever you have to say. So you don't have to sort of become rude or aggressive, or you do not have to become nervous, because that's exactly what they're checking.
Yeah, so I think with that, we'll come to the end of the session and we'll just give a final word of advice from each of our end. So, firstly, like, I mean, congratulations to everybody who's got the calls. I mean, you've basically won half the battle, and now is the actual part that remains. But just remember one thing, that if you've made it up till here, you do have the potential to actually come to the other side as well. So just believe in yourself, be confident, and make sure that like you know what you're talking about in the interview. So there's really nothing to be scared. Those interviewers have not come to scare you or just grill you. It's really up to you how you lead the interview, and it's not as intimidating as it sounds. So yeah, just be confident and give it your best shot. And good luck.
Yeah, just like Anushka said, congratulations to everyone. And as for your WAT and PI interviews, I would say work on your like be thorough with your background and read about, be aware of the latest news as well, and also be ready with your basic concepts and prepare B school specifics. Like, do read up about the B school that you're interviewing for, and also do read up those Telegram chat groups that we have, the questions that we are provided with.
Yeah, so congratulations, as the both of them have said. My final word of advice would be thorough with whatever is associated with your profile. Be confident at all times. Do not lose your cool. Interviewers are, they sound intimidating, but they're not. They're just really a conversation about what exactly have you done in your life and how is an MBA and that particular B school going to help you. So just be confident in what you know. Don't think if you say I don't know to something, it will reflect negatively on you. It doesn't. So just be confident, and I'm sure everybody of you are going to make it. I hope all of you make it to your dream B schools.
So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. That'll be it from our side.